Yes, we're looking at something else now, away from all the politics. Yes, you're aware that the president did sign that AFCFTA in Niamey, Niger Republic. But, you know, much as there's a lot of optimism on the ground, and as there ought to be, there could be implications as well, security-wise, for good or for bad. And that's what we want to examine this morning. What are the security implications for the signing of this AFCFTA? We have with us this morning retired Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu, who is a peace and security development expert. He's also a senior consultant at the National Defense College. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily this morning.
Thank you very much, Maopi. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I'm sure that you have seen this, the signing by the president, and I'm sure that, are you excited about it? I don't know if you're excited. Let me ask you that. I cannot say I'm sure that you are.
Well, if you look all over the world, we are moving towards integration. And individualism is going out of stake. So we could say there's a lot of optimism as Nigeria joins, finally, all the other African nations to be part of this African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Indeed, there's a lot of optimism. But are you optimistic?
I am optimistic, but then the optimism, just like we continue to say about Nigeria's potential, which has not been realized, there are certain steps that Nigeria must take. Just signing is not enough. Even smaller countries, if we're not careful, will take greater advantage on this than Nigeria. Certainly, Nigeria is a giant. That's why almost all the continent was waiting for Nigeria to sign. However, if we don't take, specific actions to plan our industries, to plan our citizens to benefit from this after, we may just be feeding other people.
So tell us, what security implications are you saying? I mean, indeed, we're looking at free trade. We're looking at, they've told us there are different layers to that, there's first of all the general agreement of free trade. Then we could have common customs, and before we begin to talk about common currency. And with all of this will definitely come different layers of security implications. For now, what do you see?
Yes, certainly the free trade agreement has some security implications. There are benefits or potential benefits, and there are also challenges.
Security-wise?
Security-wise.
Okay.
Let's look at the benefits. If you look at the after carefully, it is framed to encourage human security. Human security is a new term now that somehow differs, or rather expands our notion of national security before, which is just military and defense. Now, when you are talking about human security, you have to look at the human survival, human livelihood, human dignity. So issues like climate change, issues like health, issues like drugs, issues like water and food security all come into it. So it is in this prism that we have to look at the after. The after, actually, if it is, if it works as advertised, intends to increase human security, because all the countries now are coming together. Because when you look at Africa in general, even in Nigeria here, we've been talking about climate change. Climate change could be part of, not necessarily the whole of what is causing hardest farmers' conflict, even the issue in the northeast where we are fighting Boko Haram, the fact that there are many youths that because of climate change, they have lost their source of livelihood, which makes it easy for Boko Haram to recruit them by giving them an alternative government. So if you look at these things, when the countries come together, what we see in the after is likelihood that human security will be, enhanced. That is one issue. The other issue is that, political scientists are in agreement that when you have a supernatural organization bringing many countries, even the possibility of any of those countries going to war against each other is highly reduced. Because if country A is trading with country B, certainly there are costs for you going to fight with your partner. So we see, and so you see, meaning after bringing for example, again, if you go to EU countries, it is very difficult to find one EU country fighting another because they have common trade. So when you increase trade, the possibility of even the countries going to war against each other is reduced. So by that, you are also contributing to national security. You also look at the provision of public goods like health, like education, like good governance, all these things that countries can give to their citizens. When you look at it at a regional level, there's no one single country in Africa that can provide all these public goods. So what is needed is a concerted effort of the countries coming together so that each will contribute according to its strength, so that this public goods, is it health, is it the products of science and research, is it continental roads, airports, so that each will contribute according to its strength, and these things are brought to the citizens of Africa. And when citizens of Africa are, are empowered, that reduces conflict. Because one of the reasons of conflict in Africa is scarcity of resources, is poor governance. So if these resources are made available to a large number, it still also adds, to the element of human security.
Yes.
Now let's look at for everything that has its pros, there are also cons. Now, when we look at the after, it is going to bring, as advertised, it's going to bring free movement of goods and services, kind of like collapsing the borders. Now that has its own problem. Problems of whenever you have free movement of goods and purpose, the good and the bad will enter. You have transnational organized criminals that also, apart from the goods that we know which are beneficial, they also trade in goods and services that are not beneficial to the society. There could be movement of terrorists and organized criminals. There could be movement of illegal weapons. There could be movement of fake drugs, fake products. There could even be trafficking in persons and forced labor. So these are the challenges, again, that will come with this, after.
But those challenges are already there, aren't they?
They are there, but now they are going to be multiplied. Because in the long run, if what you are going, borders are virtually going to collapse, so that there will be free movement. You will have the Schengen, where one visa from one country will take you around about 15 or 20 countries. Is that not so? That is what was also in the final analysis, that's what we're going to have. So people are going to move. Goods are going to move. But among those goods and people that are going to move, there are some with good intention and there are some with bad intention. So the challenge will be for each country to make sure that its security, its border security, its post security, and everything is at par. So that if you have a weak control, some countries will become like safe haven for these criminals, for these terrorists, while they, with time, the terrorists and the other offenders, they will know which countries are really strong in bringing this into fruition and which countries are weak. Of course,
indeed. They say a chain is as strong as its weakest.
Yeah, so we have to look out for those weak links. We have to look chink in the armor. Criminals are going to look for chink in the armor. Terrorists are going to look for the chink in the armor. Now, another challenge again, security-wise, is that this movement and goods and properties, the continent as a whole is going to compete with other regions of the world. So there has to be, an effort to improve security in terms of traffic, in terms of routes, in terms of airports, in terms of ports. Right now, when you look at, let's start with maritime security. When you look in latest reports, the areas in the world, first, international trade, 90% of it is done by maritime by containers. If you look at it now, currently the areas, the ports that are assumed to be most at risk for businesses are the ports in the Gulf of Guinea, including Nigeria, and the ports in the Horn of Africa. The Americans, so much because of the insecurity around the maritime industry, they started what is called a container security initiative, out of which they collaborate. American ports collaborate with other ports in the world to ensure that the idea is to extend the security zone for all goods coming into America, far away from the American border, so that first, second, and third line checks are done away from America, so that any goods that enter, they have already been cleared. Unfortunately, when you look at the ports currently, partnering in this CSI, there are 58, I think, ports. Only one is from Africa. That's only one has qualified with that security. Now, if you don't have security in your ports, that is going to discourage trade. That is going to make trade even more expensive, because insurance in the maritime industry, if you say you're going to Gulf of Guinea, your premium is going to go high, because they believe that there is a higher probability that either piracy, either contamination of the containers, that is something being inserted, is higher in those areas. So African countries, and particularly also Nigeria, they have to work on transport security, on transport of the routes. Now, I said 90% goes by maritime. Of course, there are goods that will go by the roads, and then areas that are prone with conflict will also have challenge, because people will avoid those areas. So these are areas, that for the African Trade Agreement to do it, like I said, there are benefits and there are challenges. In the sum, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a nexus between global or continental trade, human insecurity, and also climate change.
Now, you have talked about that human security, and some people will say that, much as the opportunities are going to abound, and that's what people are saying, people have to seize the opportunities. And if people are not able to seize it, there cannot be advantages for the people. Do you think that, on the whole, Nigerians are aware of what is coming? Yes, it's been in the media, and as much as possible, media houses are trying to keep this on the front pages. You still see stories on it. I think only recently we saw on the front pages as well. The Afrexim Bank I think, is preparing about $1 billion for Nigeria alone to be able to be a part of this AFCFTA. I don't know why I like to call the full acronym.
Yes.
But, you know, do you think that we are ready in terms of looking as a people at our huge population to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming?
That is the million-dollar question. Are we ready? Certainly we are not. Now, if you see, almost the whole continent waited for Nigeria. When you check about after until this last week that the president went and signed, they have been waiting for Nigeria. Certainly you cannot talk about continental trade without factoring Nigeria, by virtue of our resources, by virtue of our size, by virtue of our population, by virtue of our economic power. However, it is not the most the most powerful economic countries that will automatically benefit from the after. Every country now will go back to the drawing board to see how will it, you know, raise its standards so that it benefits maximally. If not, you'll be surprised. Even some of the, you know, forward-thinking smaller countries that will benefit more from this trade. And what do I mean? Nigeria should be able to prepare our industries, our businessmen, and mostly our citizens to benefit. There are a lot of opportunities, but these opportunities can only be obtained if we prepare our citizens with certain skills. Here, I'm particular about youth. We have teeming unemployed youth. How do they gain into this? Just 2 days back at the National Defense College, we did a roundtable on youth restiveness and social instability. What we find discussing with that's under the Center for Strategic Research and Study of the National Defense College. What we find discussing with stakeholders, discussing with youth that are in the NYSC program, is that there's a loss of hope. There is no much job around. Definitely, you know, there's no job around. But this after is going to break the Zoom. But it's going to open only for those youths that are really prepared. For example, one skill, if there's anything that late General Abacha did, was trying to emphasize that Nigerians should acquire language skills. Whether we like it or not, West Africa is basically a Francophone region because there are more West African. In Africa, you have colonial languages. Apart from English, you have French, you have Arabic, you have Portuguese.
You also have Swahili. Why
Swahili. So honest, if you don't have, I will give you an example. If there's a maritime engineer in Nigeria who speaks only English, and there's a maritime engineer from Senegal who speaks English and French, and they go for competing for work under this after, certainly the Senegalese will top. And this is what we are seeing even in organs that are situated here in Nigeria. If you take a walk across to ECOWAS headquarters here, you'll go and find typists, secretaries, but most of them are not Nigerians. A small research will tell you why. When ECOWAS is looking for secretaries, they are looking for somebody who speaks French, English, or Portuguese, the languages that the ECOWAS uses. Nigerians are not there. We have teeming population. With due respect, how much does it take for a young man to train himself to be a secretary? Not much compared to going to this. But you'll find in places like African Union, because of these skills, people pay for skills now. It's skills, not necessarily. Somebody who is working as a secretary in ECOWAS may earn as much as a director in a Nigerian institution because they are paying for skills. Skills are rare. So this is what I mean. We have to, you know, we have to prepare our young men and women to benefit. Just signing is not going to do. And, you know, getting the skills that will be relevant in after is what is going to make sure that Nigeria derives maximum benefit, preparing our industries, preparing our custom officials.
I'm going to have to interrupt you.
Yes.
Well, I'm also thinking about dusting my French certificate. But
you better do. You'll thank me.
In the meantime, take a moment now. I hope you're also giving this some thoughts as well in terms of how we're preparing to benefit and take opportunities brought about by the AFCFTA. In just a moment, please stay with us.
They take boys that have just...
Well, Group Captain Sadiq Garba Shehu retired is still with us in the studio, and we're talking about how to make the gains from this AFCFTA. At the same time, the security implications, because if we're not able to maximize the potential that this deal holds, it could create, you know, adverse security implications, or could have adverse security implications for the country, and that's what we're looking at this morning. How do we avoid the adverse security implications that this could bring, and, you know, ensure that we have security of lives and property as a result of this deal? I know that you were talking about human security and the skills that our young people need to have to be able to benefit from this. But I mean, aside let me say, what should we be doing right now? What should government be doing? Because we have identified the pros and the cons, and we could go on and talk about them in detail. But what do you think that the government, or do you think that this is just a role for government in terms of preparing young people to benefit from this?
There's definitely a role for government, because you know, there has to be concerted effort. You don't allow the citizens. There are some, yes, citizens can take initiative, but for it to have you know, a multiplier effect, there has to be a concerted government effort to teach skills to our businessmen, mostly to our youth, so that they can compete favorably, you know, and occupy the spaces. And like I said, part of the security challenges, you know, emanates from Nigeria's position in global politics. Nigeria, by size, by population, we're a big market in ourselves. There is no any serious business that would like to have business in Nigeria. So this the availability of large market, the availability of large market in Nigeria makes Nigeria like a magnet to attract both the good and the bad.
Has it made us complacent? Is that the reason why we're very relaxed?
We are. In all honesty, we are. By virtue, I have moved around a lot. I have worked with many international organizations, but honest, in proportion to, I mean, to our population, you know, we don't, we are not punching according to our weight. And in all honesty, it's because there's no concerted effort. I will give you a typical example. When I emphasize, you know, youth having skills that will make them competitive, our near neighbor here, not very near Senegal, is an example. Right from primary school, Senegal being a francophone country, they have this concerted policy of making their education almost bilingual. In Africa, or I can say in West Africa, I give Senegal for that. And in all honesty, when you check in all international organizations, is it from Red Cross, United Nations, the number of Senegalese that get to enter this organization is far, far, far out of proportion with their relatively small population. But it is something of a government, you know, it's a government policy. The government has to, you know, channel the people towards how they are going to get. If you allow everybody to his own device, some people don't have a device at all. We don't have the same opportunity. So definitely Nigeria's government has to put in policies that will make us, if not honest, we will be a big giant in that after, but we will not derive benefits commensurate with our size in economy and population.
It's a fine place to live it. I sincerely hope that, you know, this gets us thinking in terms of how we can benefit and make the most of this, not just for ourselves, but also for children yet unborn. We have to thank you for coming on Sunrise Today this morning. Retired Group Captain Sadiq Bashir, who is a Peace and Security Development Expert and Senior Research Fellow at the National Defense College. That has been Sunrise Today this morning. We hope that you've enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
Merci beaucoup, Maokwe. I'm Chamberlain also.
I'm Gimba Omar. And I'm Ayo Makinde. We ask you to have a beautiful day.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this program are those of the maker and do not reflect the views, opinions, and endorsement of Channels Television.